John Grimm is a son of the forest, a strong man with a strong love for his friends and the games they played going back to the 1970s at Mac High. And there were a lot of games: football, baseball, and basketball.
Well, I watched him in all three, and of course, I fell in love with his toughness for basketball. And as I've thought about him a little bit lately, and I raised my family in McMinnville, and I know what my kids did. My kids were hard workers. They're out in those berry fields and so on, and John is raised in Willamina in a whole different environment than the nice little pleasant town of McMinnville. So he's in an environment where everybody works their fanny off, and he's got his brothers and his dad leading the way. So he's in a family that manages timber and logs and so on. So that's the way he was raised. So he comes to McMinnville, and he's a quiet kid when he gets there. He comes as a ninth grader. But you could see this competitiveness. One of the biggest things was to watch John compete.
I think that actually Nick is the person that hung the nickname on him, the gritty little logger. And he told me the other day that his college friends called him that all the way through college. It was kind of a nickname that stuck with him, and something that anybody that ever played with John knew that he had a real strong family background in the logging business.
John Grimm was a 135-pound running back and quarterback as a Mac High freshman. It didn't take long for him to establish himself on 3 teams. By his sophomore year, he was leading scorer on the JV basketball squad and a fixture in the football and baseball programs.
The very first thing I thought of in coaching John, it was always, I coached him in JV basketball, and then I was an assistant in basketball and baseball. And John came to practice and worked every single day. I never ever had him take a day off from practice. Whatever we were doing, he was going to do it 100%.
Grimm's work ethic extended to the classroom and school organizations. He was a quiet leader off and on the court, even as Grizzly basketball was building toward big things with the arrival of Charlie Sitton.
One thing I would tell you about one incident is it showed what John was made of. So our first practice when Charlie Sitton is a sophomore, in walks Charlie, who goes 100 miles an hour, and John Grimm and Pat Garlock walk in, and they are not going to allow him to beat them in anything. It was an incredible first day of practice. All 3 of them pulled a growing muscle, I think, trying to beat each other. And John and Pat were just not going to let Charlie dominate him, and Charlie was going to knock these seniors down, So that team was very competitive that way because of John Grimm.
One of my best memories of John was this Legion baseball game. It's 100 degrees, and he's wanting extra fly balls before the game starts. And I found out afterwards, John, for 3 years, got up at 6 o'clock in the morning every day in the summer to go to work in the woods so he could get off in time to play football, basketball, or baseball. To the best of my knowledge, I don't think he ever missed a game in any of the 3 sports in the summer. I don't think there's too many kids in this day and age that want to get up 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning, be at work at 6 in the morning, work in the woods all day long, and play a sport 5 days a week all summer long. And John did that for 3 years, and I never once heard him complain.
John's senior year rounded out his contributions to Mac High athletics, quarterback of the 6-3 football team, an all-state performance on the diamond, batting .382, playing shortstop, third base, and pitching. And he was a leader of the 24-3 basketball squad that was 1 year away from a state championship. The Grizzlies finished 4th in the state in 1978, and ironically, one of John's greatest contributions came in the final game of his career.
We're playing a 4th place game against Marshfield, and it's a close game. And John, we are behind by 1, 4 or 5 seconds to go in the game, and John gets fouled. Up to that juncture, that's the only game in his entire life he had not scored in. He had not scored a point. Walked up the foul line, hit 2 free throws on a 1-on-1 to win the game and win the 4th place trophy. And to me, that was always, and both Nick and I used to use that as an example to kids about mental toughness, that here's a guy that's a 4-year starter, had never been shut out in a game in his life in basketball. And in the state tournament, 1 point behind, a 1-on-1, 4 seconds to go, and that's when he scores his only 2 points of the game. And to me, that always kind of typified John Grimm as an athlete, a person, and a player.
And just like that, it seemed John Grimm's athletic career was over. Until it wasn't. John landed across town at Linfield, first just as a JV baseball player, but the lure of the gridiron drew him to Ad Rutschman's nationally renowned football program. Still undersized and on a team loaded with offensive players, John made a big switch to playing defensive end.
When I first saw him, like everybody else, he was an odd defensive end, right? Here's a guy who played quarterback in high school and was, I think, a 2-guard on the basketball team, and he's out there in a defensive line position. I mean, if you went to block him, you kind of knew immediately that you had underestimated him. That dude was logger strong. He was really strong and also very, very smart, right? So he knew where plays were going before a play got 3 steps in and would just make, plays. So yeah, John was pretty amazing.
Grimm put on 20 pounds and worked in the forest, becoming a stalwart at what we now call an edge rusher.
Yeah, that's why I say it was just a great example of Ad's program. There were a lot of guys that came in, and through the development, just natural growth and hard work, that was John. And he was kind of a rangy player that was strong and could handle the edge against the run, but was versatile enough to do stuff in pass defense that we needed him to do. So that's why that outside linebacker in the 3-4s, you have to play against offensive tackles, and then you have to go down and be able to cover against receivers that are running pass routes.
John became a starter on a very talented 1981 team that fell short in postseason. But everything gelled for the Cats, and Grimm stayed around for one more year and the run to Linfield's first NAIA national championship.
So coming into our senior year, we had no idea how good we were going to be, right? And I think with that mentality, having the mentality of we got something to prove, was really a catalyst to us going on and being able to, make it to the championship and win it.
The bonds of a small town and a small college experience are ones that last. John Grimm still works in the woods and is still connected to his brothers from Mac High to Linfield and beyond.
Well, John is one of my best friends. He's still one of my best friends. We see each other a couple, 3 times a year, even though we live quite a ways apart. He probably won't like this phrase, but I kind of think he's like a brilliant goofball. He's got a very interesting sense of humor, very physical kind of sense of humor. He knows how to, look at the world in a kind of a different way. And he's just really, really smart. And that's something, that comes out of him. There's that intelligence, but also, he's not cynical. He's not burned out. He's got a real joy to him, almost like a boyish kind of charm, joy, even now, to this day. So yeah, he's just a lot of fun to be around, and when you're around John, you're going to laugh, right? Because it's going to be fun. He's going to have fun things to say and come up with some fun ideas. And yeah, he's just a great person.
Today, we welcome John Grimm to the McMinnville High School Hall of Fame.